Welcome to Callawegin Fly Fishing with Robert Smart. Now, here's Robert.
Greetings. The purpose of this video is to help the beginning fly tyer know what equipment and materials that he will need to get started. Now, those of you that have tied flies for a long time know there's an infinite number of materials you can buy, and tools for that matter. I tried to cover what I consider the basic necessities to get started in fly tying. You can get these tools in a pre-made kit or buy them individually. Price ranges vary, like in any hobby, from just minimal up to thousands of dollars. So get what you can afford. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to get started with this. So I hope you enjoy the video, and here we go. Okay, the first fly tying tool we're going to talk about is a vise. Now, let me adjust the camera so you can see mine. Okay. This is a fairly simple vise. It's the lower price end of most of them, but it does everything I need to do. It's got a heavy steel base. It's movable. I can put it anywhere on my table that I want. It will rotate so I can get to the bottom of the hook. I can adjust it in or out by loosening this nut here. It's got this extended arm on here so I can adjust my thread at any position I want, or move it in a little closer and use it to keep my bobbin from spinning. The clamping mechanism's real simple. Just snug that up. It holds the hook well. If my hook's smaller and I need it a little tighter, I can adjust this ring here to adjust the clamping force. You can get more complicated vices at higher prices, but I've had this one for over 30 years and it still works like a charm. There's another vise that I have. It's cheaper, but I can take this one into the field with me, even onto the stream bed, and tie a fly right there while I'm sitting by the stream. The box has some elastic loops to hold tools. It's very simple. You just screw this shaft to the base, stick that in, tighten the nut up to whatever position I want. And clamp it. That's it. Real simple. Now, there's not much else to say about vices. They just hold your hook at any position that you want to deal with. So we'll go on to the next item here. Okay, this next item is called a bobbin. It holds your thread, keeps it under control, makes it easy to work with. Some folks just use their hands, but that's real difficult, especially when you have old fat fingers like me. A handy item to have with your bobbin is a bobbin threader. The way that works is it's hard to get that thread through this tube. So put your thread in the bobbin, get a little slack, stick this threader in the tube, and you see that loop in the end of the threader. You just put the thread inside that loop and it pulls it right through. Real easy. It saves you from taking 5 minutes trying to get the darn thread in there. Now, like I said, the bobbin gives you full control of your thread without anything getting in the way. Hold your line down straight. If you have an adjustment and you need to hold the line out to one side, do that with your bobbin. This is an essential tool to have. This next item is a hair stacker. A lot of the flies you tie will require some kind of hair. Deer hair, elk hair, like a elk hair caddis. But you want the ends of the fur to be even. So I'll show you how this works. Here I've got some moose hair. Cut off a chunk of it. Now before you notice how the ends are uneven. Before you put it in there, either take a comb or your fingers and get any under fur out of there. Otherwise it'll make it hard to stack. Then you take the ends that you want even and put them in the stacker like that. Next, you just tap it, and you do it pretty hard several times. If you don't get it the first time, you can do it again. Then real carefully, I only got one that was off. Take them out. There they go, nice and even. Now you're ready to put it on your hook. And that's about it. Very handy tool. Not absolutely necessary, but boy, it makes life a lot easier when dealing with hair for your fly. Okay, now we're going to talk about hackle pliers. There's several types, but the two general types are this original called an English hackle plier, and this is a rotating head hackle plier. Now I seldom use this old English style other than to maybe hold thread or something that I'm dealing with. But I like this rotating head because as you wrap your hackle, it'll rotate. What that does is it keeps that hackle square to the hook. And because if you use this other one and you just go like this, it'll tend to twist the feather. You don't want that. Just showing you how it works here. I use a big feather to make it easier to see. Okay, once you tie your feather on, just take the hackle pliers, grab the end of the hackle, and you start rotating. You'll notice how that feather doesn't twist. It stays right square with the hook. Gives you good control. Basically, that's what you want with the hackle plier. Obviously, one of the things you need is a good pair of scissors. I actually stole these from my wife's sewing cabinet. It's got a nice narrow tip. I can get in there to trim things. It's got a lock. Open it up. These are very, very sharp. But you need a real good set of scissors when you're working with trimming things up. Now also, you want to get a fairly thick needle. And the purpose of this is to apply your head cement glue to the head of your fly. Now, they make several different brands. A lot of them are real good. I ran across this brand called Hard as Hull. And they give you two types. This one's a penetrating head cement, which soaks into the thread or maybe thorax dubbing or whatever you want to hold tight. And this one is a glossy coat cement. So if you want the head of your fly to be a little more glossy and attractive, you would use this type. So far, these two have worked well for me. This is an important item. This is a whip finisher. It's how you tie that last knot on the head when you're finishing up your fly. There's two styles. One's called a Thompson and one's called a Maternelli. Now, I don't use the Thompson. It's a little more complicated. I use the Maternelli. Real easy to use. Let me show you how it works. Okay, you've finished your fly and you're ready to tie that last knot. And you tape the whip finish tool and take that first hook, hook it right over the thread, then take your thread around the back hook and then across the front like that. And then you just wrap it. I usually go 4 or 5 times. Tilt it, slip it off the back, pull it snug, slip it out. Done. Good strong knot. Show you again. Front hook around, well, I'll get there. Around the back hook, cross, and then you start wrapping. Slip off the back, pull out the front, snug it up, good knot. That's how you use the whip finish tool. Okay, now finally, you need some decent lighting, and it's good to have a magnification system. They make these big magnifying glasses you can look through. I just use reading glasses. They're rated 3 magnification, and I just switch these on. Easy to use. Well, that's all the tools that I think are absolutely required for fly tying. Now the next part of this video is going to be what I consider the minimum material that you will need to tie flies. So we'll be back here in a minute. Okay, in this segment we're going to talk about material. Now, one of the main groups of material that you're going to need are capes. That's a skin chicken neck with all the feathers on it. There's various colors that you can get, and you can spend more for a full cape. They're not cheap. You can go with a half cape, a little cheaper, or even smaller amounts. If you tie a lot of smaller flies, something like this is handy. or you can even go with something like this. A lot cheaper. And these are actually the smallest hackle feathers that I have. You need all sides of hackle feathers though. For tying your hackle on your parachute or around the front of the fly, if it's a small fly, you need real thin, small hackles. You know, a mid-sized fly, something like this. I use the big hackles mostly to get tail feathers. Take a big hackle, grab a group of the barbels on them, trim that off, and there's your tail. So that's capes. We'll move on to the next item. Now, other feathers that you're going to need, they vary, wide range. I'm going to show you a few that'll get you through most of the flies that you're going to tie. Pheasant feathers. Very handy. Pheasant tail nymph. Plenty of applications for the pheasant. I also, since I'm a turkey hunter, I have a ton of turkey feathers that I can use similar to a pheasant feather. I've got so many turkey feathers, I could last 2,000 years with them. Another handy fly is the marabou. You can get these in any color, but you tie these on the back of a streamer, a nymph or something, and it makes a real wavy tail, real soft and floaty. You can get the effect you want with using the marabou. Another type are quills. I don't use quills too often, but they're handy for making wings on your dry flies. You can get them in any color you want. Another type of fly, this is just one of them, but this is part of a duck feather. Real nice to use with making nymphs. They make a nice collar around right behind the thorax, makes that nymph flow real well. And they make a real pretty fly too. And then finally, saddle hackles. They're not really good for making dry fly hackles because the barbels are softer and usually longer. You use these usually around a nymph that you're tying or even a wet fly. You wrap it around and the soft barbels point to the back and make a flowing neck on the fly. They're used almost exclusively for making nymphs or other types of wet flies, but you need to get some of those as well. Now I want to talk about hair. You use hair for various things. Elk hair caddis. Hair, if you're a bass fisherman or fishing out west and you want to make a mouse fly, you use deer hair and you trim it down on the body so it makes a solid looking mouse body. There's a dry fly called a humpy. You use hair making that. There's just tons of uses and there's infinite amount. Hair comes in any dyed color you want. I use my deer hair a lot, my elk hair, use it a lot. I don't know what this is, but I use it for tails quite a bit. I even got some moose hair. Didn't buy this, I shot this moose a couple years ago in Labrador. And this is a packet of rabbit hair that I bought. Use it for making hare's ear nymphs and some other things. Very handy. But like I said, there's a huge selection in hair and in various colors. And as you start tying more flies, I guarantee you're going to need it. The next item is dubbing. Now you can buy it, in a set like this, which is handy. It's organized. Gives you all different types of dubbing, different colors, different consistencies, depending on your need. Now, I've got boxes full of this other dubbing. Actually, this dubbing, I pulled this out of our dryer filter. Looked at it and I go, well, that ought to make good dubbing. And it does. Makes a nice white, creamy colored dubbing. Didn't cost a dime. Just went to the dryer to get it. You use the dubbing to make fly bodies, thoraxes. You basically take a small bit, twist it on your line, wet your fingers, twist it on your line, and wrap it around. And then you usually hold it in place with some type of ribbing or feather. You're going to need dubbing, but it's not expensive. It's one of the cheapest materials you can find. And you'll use it a lot. The next material I want to talk about is stuff you use for ribbing. Again, infinite variety. If I want a little flash on my fly, I might use some ribbing like this. I put the dubbing on, then wrap this forward, nice and even. And this is another material I use a lot. I use this for ribbing, and I might even put a couple strands of this in the tail. I use this in my go-to bluegill nymph, black beadhead nymph with some flash on it. Bluegill go crazy over it. Like I said, there's any number of types, all different colors. A lot of stuff around the house. This is some heavy yellow thread that I use for ribbing material. Stole it out of my wife's sewing room. She caught me on that too. Just use your imagination. There's lots of household items you can use to make ribbing material out of. A lot of this is store-bought. It's not real expensive. So get a wide variety because you're going to want to experiment with what works. Now this little section's on a material that I use an awful lot. It's peacock girl. Now this peacock is dyed a little bit orange brown. Or we got the standard common green peacock. The Griffith gnat, the whole body's made out of peacock. I use peacock a lot. It's a little tricky to work with. It can get brittle on you, and as you're wrapping it, it can break. Sometimes if you soak it in water for a little bit before you use it, it's a little more resilient. But if you're just careful, it'll be okay. I often use 2 strands or 3 strands of peacock together, and then I'll twist them all together and then wrap them. And then they tend not to break. But you need to get some peacock. It's a real usable material. You can use it for ribbing or an entire body. Let's talk about thread. You can get it in any color you want. But the thing to keep in mind is thread has different thicknesses and strengths. Now there's 2 naming conventions. One's the Ott convention, the other's the, what do they call it? Denier convention. 6/0 and Denier 140 are about the same. These are stronger, thicker threads. They tend not to break on you, but they're a little thick for really small flies. When that happens, you would tend to go to something like an 8/0 or a 70 denier. And that's a much thinner thread, and you can get it working on the hook better on the small flies, but you can't be ham-handed. You use that thinner thread, you go to tighten up your whip finish, boom, you snap your thread. So if I can get by, I'll use the 6/0 or the 140 thread as much as I can. You can work with it and you can pull pretty hard on it, and it usually won't break. Another material that's handy to have is foam. Now, you can buy these round foam pieces in any size, and they're great for making parachute posts on your dry flies. My trouble is I often can't find the round ones. The local stores usually don't carry them. I got to order them online. So I've bought some thin foam, and I'll just cut a real thin strip out of that and use that to make my posts out of. You can also use sheeted foam for making foam body flies. Like out west, we use a lot of foam to make the salmon fly. I make a lot of crickets with black foam sheet. Their body's made of foam. They won't sink. They work great. So foam's a handy material to get. It's not real expensive. If you can find them, get the round posts, the round foam to make your posts out of. If you can't, get some sheets and you can cut it up for that. Another handy material to have on hand is wire. I use this copper wire a lot. I use it for ribbing mostly. A few other uses, but copper wire of various thicknesses is real handy to have. And then I've got this lead wire. This is pretty thick gauge. You can get it in smaller gauge. When I'm tying a nymph or a scud that I want to be weighted, I'll wrap some of this around the hook before I build the body. And you don't got to worry about adding a split shot or something like that to get your fly down. It's already self-weighted. Works like a charm. I recommend you get a couple of thicker and thinner gauges of lead wire, and the same with the copper wire. Okay, this last item I want to talk about is beads. I don't know if you can see these. I don't want to dump them, but I've got a ton of different types of beads. Little copper beads. I've got some gray tungsten, a bunch of plastic beads, and you've heard of various bead head nymphs. Well, that's what you use. You put the bead up at the front of the hook. It adds weight to it. It adds flash to it. Makes a real good fly. But like most of the other stuff, you can get beads down to so little I can barely see them, all the way up to large beads. I've put beads on a size 20 nymph, and that's a little bead. But it's real handy to get various sizes of those. You get them online anywhere. They're a common fly tying material. Now, the only other thing I want to mention, we've talked about a lot of materials and tools and everything else, is organize your workspace. I've got a wall-mounted box with a bunch of little drawers in it that I keep a bunch of my material in. I've got a larger box with big plastic bags in it, Ziplocs, with each of my type of feathers and ribbing material, and I kind of keep it organized in this box with labels at the top so I can get to them easily. Just try to keep it all organized, and it'll make things go a lot quicker and easier for you. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something. This is for beginners. and just let you know what you're going to need to get started. Now, if you want to see actual fly tying examples, I've got several on a YouTube channel, Callawegin Fly Fishing, but there's thousands of them from other really good tiers. Just Google and search whatever fly you want to try to tie, and you'll get plenty of videos on how to tie it. So look at some of those videos first and then get started. Thanks for watching.